Hey guys, today we're going to compare a limited slip differential to an open diff. There are so many good videos out there that describe how a differential works. Basically, it allows the wheels to turn different speeds while applying power. This is crucial for turning. However, in low traction scenarios, you need a traction aid to help you. Now, there's no set locker that's one's better than the other. When it comes to clutch base, helical style limited slips, lockers, whether it be automatic, air, or electronic, one doesn't beat one in the other one. It's just that there are different applications for them. So here we have my truck. It used to have a G80 locker in it. Now it has a Duragrip limited slip because this truck mainly sees a lot of street duty and we want it to be better in the wet pavement. Really mild off-road, that's what we need it for, and we want to be really durable and a lot more predictable. The Range Rover here is an open diff, so I've picked the Duragrip one for price point, durability, and how I'm using it. If this truck were to go off-road more often, we would probably want a Detroit locker. So now they know the application, why we picked it. Let's see how they do in a low traction scenario. So for this test, we are in a bit of an incline, and you see this side has nothing. And on this side, we're going to use a piece of steel. And we're going to hit it with WD-40 to make it slippery. Now the first test, we're going to simulate just an incline. And we're going to see how well the limited slip does. The second test, we're actually going to chop the wheel over here. I'm going to put it in front of the front wheel to give a lot of resistance, simulating like we're in a trail and we have resistance in front. We're in a rut on the front wheels and the rear wheels have now more resistance. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to click the e-brake a couple turns to add more bias because I'm pretty sure what's going to happen is I'm not going to get enough lockup to push over that, but we'll try it. Okay, so that worked really well. Let's do it again. I'm going to continuously film it so you guys can see that I am hitting it. I'm going to hit the tire too. I want to make this as slippery as possible because I want to simulate ice. So we're going to do it one more time, no resistance, and then we're going to add resistance afterwards. We have our obstacle here. Back there we have our slippery surface. And then over here we have nothing. So just in two-wheel drive, we're gonna see how this walks up. I'm assuming what's gonna happen is nothing's gonna really happen. I'm not gonna get much lockup. And then if I can't get to walk up because I don't have enough lockup in the rear, I am going to apply the parking brake a couple clicks. Now, this is a Yukon Duragrip. It's clutch based like the old muscle cars. It's got it's got 4 preload springs on it. The preload is what helps eliminate slip. Now if you had a Torsen, you'd probably do the same thing because in a Torsen situation, a helical gear, it's not going to walk up at all. At least on the clutch with the preload, I'm able to walk up somewhat. Now a locking diff like the G80 or Detroit locker is going to work a lot better in this situation, but we want to show that you still can get out of these situations with the right technique. So I'm going to hand over the camera so it's one take. So you guys can see that we had a lot of slip and I was giving it very little throttle. So as I kept applying more and more, there's two things that are happening. One, the more we're doing this, we're getting less WD-40, so we're gaining friction. But I kept, at the end of it, I was applying more throttle, applying more torque. And then I had to get on the parking brake a bit, but then I started to get some torque by. So there are pros and cons to these limited slips. Now the nice thing about limited slip is with the preload, this works really well on the pavement and the wet, especially on a right turn. Now we live in North America, so our right turns are a lot more aggressive, so a lot of the weight will come off the inside wheel as opposed to a left turn where it's more gradual. So what I find is with the preload, it grips really, really well. However, limited slips in general, this is kind of like what they don't like when you reduce the friction a lot. If you have a tire in the air, you have ice on one side, limited slips don't perform that great in these situations. If the friction is relatively the same on both sides, they perform a lot better. Or if you have more plant, but like here we're going like zero friction, we're putting lubricant on a really smooth, slick surface. You can see here we're grinding off the paint with the studs on the tires. So it doesn't work. I admit I had a G80 in here as well. The G80 would have worked really well in this situation. However, the G80 doesn't work well in those right turn lanes sometimes. Sometimes there'd be a car coming, so if we're turning right, let's say there's a car coming this way and you misjudge and you need to accelerate really quickly, sometimes it would act like an open diff because the counterweight wouldn't pop out. And also in those situations, that's where people kind of blow them up, is when that counterweight does decide to, and you have lots of traction on one side and you're giving it a lot of throttle and you're applying a lot of torque, that's where you can break those. So that's where a limited slip, because it has the ability to slip inside of itself, it will work a lot better in those types of situations. So not there's no perfect traction device. A perfect traction device would allow you to slip when you need to make turns, but then give you full lock when you need it. Now there's electronic lockers or air lockers that do that, but the user has to use it, and air lockers aren't on all the time like these limited slips are. So for me, what I use, this truck's mainly on the street, and it works really well for like 90% of the situations. Now in this particular situation, it doesn't work so well. It works okay. So these are the things that we have to know. Now if we have ice on both sides, we're not really moving anywhere. So we want to demonstrate, can we get enough lockup to move this truck forward, which we can with enough technique. Okay, now we're gonna do the Ranger. Now I don't expect much, because when you saw earlier, it slipped a lot with no resistance here because we had very little traction in the back. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to try it without using the parking brake. It's probably not gonna go anywhere. I'd be surprised if it did. And we're gonna try to stay on there a little bit longer and let it try to burn off the WD-40 and start to get some friction. And we'll see if it has any kind of friction, if it at least even shoots out the steel, or if it can get over this thing. So we're gonna go ahead and hand it off, make it one take. So you guys can see we just stayed in one spot for the longest time, and eventually when the WD-40 wore off, we were able to get some friction going and just shoot it out, but we were never able to move it off of the wheel truck. So to show that we have some incline, roughly this ramp is about 40 inches, no, it's about 42 inches high. It's not at the very top because it drops down a bit. So that's roughly how high we go up relative to the ground that we're standing on right now. The length roughly is about 30 feet roughly. This is a 26-foot tape measure. We've maxed it out and we roughly have about 4 feet to go. And that's roughly our incline for our ramp. So we're trying to figure out the math here. Please, someone correct us if we're wrong. So here we have the hypotenuse, and then we have the height over here, because we're trying to find out the angle. I guess if we added this length over here, we could figure out the grade. but we just want to find out the angle of this incline that we're dealing with, and we came to 36.4 degrees. Okay, because we're dummies, we just went to engineeringtoolbox.com. We plugged in our numbers, so based on this, we have an 11.7 grade of a hill. Eden did that roller test showing a vehicle without a limited slip just gets hung up and stuck there. This particular vehicle didn't. Now, I admit the aftermarket ones are significantly more aggressive on lockup, so that's why. And you saw with no resistance in the front, just walk right up. It was as if there's nothing on it. But as soon as you put resistance on the front, oh, it almost had like an open diff. And when I had my G80, the G80 would have had no problems at all in that situation. But the G80 doesn't perform in every other situation that great either. That's where that argument comes in, what's best for your application. So I'm very happy with how the preload is working, but I have to understand how to use it in different scenarios, as we saw here, where we were getting a lot of slip, having an obstacle in front. All of our tests were performed in first gear, and this one did better. At least it got us through. It didn't do great in my books. I wouldn't say like limited slip is all you need. Now, if you have a four-wheel drive and you had, let's say, a locker in the rear and a torsion in the front, that'd be really good. That's actually what the Ford Raptor does, and it works really well. I think having a limited slip like a torsion in the front would be great because it doesn't bind. It always allows some slip. It'll allow you to turn a lot better. This particular truck, I think this is better in some ways, better than a helical. A lot of people argue, well, the helical you just have to apply brakes. That's true. And the helical style, or True Track, a lot of people like the Eden True Track, does have the ability to send more torque one direction. So its torque biasing is a little bit better than the clutch. Now the clutch one, you can match it though if you're more aggressive on the preload springs, and depending on the material that you put in, you can make these just as aggressive too, and they're rebuildable. So I think it's like a toss-up between what people want. Some people want really low maintenance and don't want any chatter. You definitely want to go with the helical style. Clutch base if you want a little more aggressive and you want that preload. I'm liking the preload so far. I've had it in the truck for about, how long have I had it? About 7 months now, dailying it, and the wet performance is fantastic. I love it. It's not too aggressive right now. We will be doing some further tests. We're going to take it on some logging truck roads to see how well it does, because putting that obstacle in front of the front tire kind of simulates us being in those situations. Now, if you're on a gravel road, things may change. It's totally random what you're going to come across, right? So that's going to be the true test. But as you can see, I would rather have something, anything, limited slip, doesn't matter what kind, over an open diff, because the open diff really doesn't do much. And at the end of this, I was applying a lot of parking brake, and it was starting to climb. It was starting to do something, so it was helping. So those of you that have an open diff, if you're in a jam, put a couple clicks on that parking brake. If you're still not getting enough torque biasing, keep applying more, and hopefully you can get it to equalize, and then you can get out of those situations. If you're in a jam, do what you have to do. So in the future, guys, we'll do some more tests and see how well this diff holds up.